welcome to Open Door, real conversations with real people. Really excited to share this episode with a dear friend of mine, Andrew Brockenbush, incredible entrepreneur, business owner, who is also writing a book. We touched on a lot of themes that his book is going to be talking about, everything from why entrepreneurship requires humility to what you need to learn from your own team, why mentors and community are important, and even just covering taking risks and having the ability to step outside of yourself. So, really excited to dive in. So, enjoy. Really excited to have on Andrew Brockenbush today. Andrew is a marketer, he's a business owner, he's a public speaker, he's a musician, a man of many talents. Really excited to have him on the podcast, where the whole point of this is through curiosity, talking to people who build things and figure out how they did it, right? Through technology, shared experiences. What are the goals? What are the things that you're pursuing? And maybe we can give you a different perspective, or maybe we can be the catalyst to encourage you on your way. So, Andrew, welcome to Open Door, sir.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for opening the door. This is awesome.
Heck yeah, I love it. I love it. One of the things that I think is really interesting. So, I met Andrew, gosh, this was 16 years ago. I was living in Houston, Texas, in the Woodlands, and I was looking for a job. I was living abroad in Spain, came back, and I went to an interview at the Apple store. And Andrew was at the time an Apple expert, right? Apple likes to rename all their things, which is a simple term for saying sales guy, right? And so Andrew interviewed me, he helped hire me, and he helped train me, right? And so a lot of, I think, something really cool that I know that you've built into your ethos, Andrew, and I've even built into my own, was I learned a lot about team dynamics and culture through that environment and the people that we worked with, right? Which was really
Absolutely.
awesome. And I learned a lot from you as well. And even a lot of those principles I know we've taken on in different areas and added our own flavor and such around. But one of the things that I thought was really unique and interesting is oftentimes, because Apple at that time was known as kind of being the machine that creatives would buy, right? So we would get CEOs that would come in and say, "Give me 15 MacBook Pros," where I was like just trying to afford one at the time, right? And I would always ask questions of, what do you do and what is your business and how do you go about it? And I was always so curious and interested. And I remember at the time too, there was that initiative to help build business relationships. And I just knows I observed that you and I were so curious about what other people were doing. And we would talk often about what if we did this, or what if you started a business, or what if we marketed, and all of that. So I'd love for you to just unpack a little bit, one, about Beefy Marketing. And because I remember you were the first one to leave the store and go off and start your own thing. What was the impetus of that idea? And how did it come about? All of that. I'd love for you to unpack a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, like it's crazy to me that it's been like 15 years. Like that's just, it makes me feel old, first of all. But super fortunate. I mean, just like you, I feel like so much of the culture that we've created in our marketing agency was kind of, the foundation was laid for that whenever I was at Apple, right? I mean, you leave one of the greatest cultures company wise in the world,
Yeah.
You learn a lot. I remember so I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and in one of the early chapters of the book, I'm sharing my experience in working at Apple, and I'm kind of talking about like those early days of Beefy before I actually kind of stepped out and took the initial risk of doing that. And I remember, like, I don't even know if you remember this, but I won this influential leader award. It was like a little crappy plastic plaque, but to me, it like was so meaningful. But what was interesting about that was actually not the award, but it was what kind of led up to that. So when I first started at Apple, like this is even pre Chris being there, like I was like an arrogant 20-something-year-old, like super confident, definitely cocky. Like I just came in and thought like I should run the place. Like I just thought like I know better than everyone around me. Like I can, and it wasn't because I think I was trying to like be that guy. I think I was just trying to prove to myself that I could be great, right? At this point, my dad had just died. I was 21 years old, something like that. He had passed away. I had already owned my first business by this time. I had owned a recording studio. It was my first ever company. And so Apple was like my first like big boy job after closing my first ever business. And so I felt like I had like a a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like I needed to like prove myself. Like I'm not a failure. I didn't leave the recording studio because I was a failure. I left the recording studio because my dad died, right? Like, and at least that was the story I was telling myself, right? But the reality was there was a lot of growing up that needed to be done. And I remember I pissed off a lot of people at Apple early on. Like Mike. Do you remember Mike? He was a genius. I can't remember Mike's last name.
I do remember Mike. Yeah.
So he hated me, bro. And I felt like, I don't know why, or I didn't realize like why, but then, I just, one of those Apple things, fearless feedback, right? Like I got some fearless feedback early on that like, I had just come in and didn't really make a great impression. And when I got that feedback, it really hurt. And so I spent the next, 6 months, 9 months doing everything in my power to like change the image that people had of me. Cause I didn't want to be that guy. Like I wanted to be the helpful, resourceful. Sure, I wanted to be successful. Like I am the kind of person that like strives for excellence, but I also didn't want to be like looked at as like a tool, like a guy that was just a jerk. And so getting that influential leader award was almost like oh, okay, you won the respect of your team back, right? So to me, it was way more not about being a leader, but it was way more about like earning the respect of the team, which I think sets such a precedence to the culture that we've created in our company now of like,
Yeah.
I have to earn the respect of my employees, my team, my clients, the vendors every single day, right? I'm constantly learning. But yeah, you're right, man. You and me gravitated heavily towards business. Whenever there was like Apple Business and they had a sexy black shirt that we could get on for being a part of Apple Business team, I was like, let's go. I want one of those black shirts that Joe's wearing, right? And we'll make it look better than poor Joe, but we're gonna get some of those.
That's so funny. And just for context, so Apple started this initiative where it was like the business leaders, and so they would give you like this black Apple shirt. Now the blue Apple shirt was such a big deal. They made that shirt, you would have to train, and when you got that shirt, you felt like you got gold, right?
Yes.
And the black shirt was like platinum, right? Like on top of all of those things, you're like, oh man, I want that black shirt. But it was this element of learning how to foster a conversation that was curious and really come alongside and help someone in their business, right? Through some of these solutions. And between you and I, this was new for Apple, one, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes it was new even for customers coming in. And so it was this element of taking a risk of having conversations saying, I don't know your business like you know your business, but I'm here to help you and foster along the way. And I felt myself becoming more and more curious of like, how did you start that? And do you have people around you? Like, how big is your team? Like, I was so interested on these people that had businesses that were coming in. They'd created economies. They had networks, systems, all these pieces. And I was like, I want in. How is this happening? Right?
Same. Oh, that feeling of like when someone would come in and like, we'd fill up those flat carts with 6 iMacs and all these trackpads and hopefully we sold Apple Care and freaking 1-to-1 back in the day to all these people. But like that feeling was like not about, for me, it wasn't about like making the sale. It was like, how are you doing this? Like what do you do that you get to buy 10 MacBook Pro? Like I wish I could afford 1 MacBook Pro. And that was a very exciting time. I feel like you and I definitely both like heavily leaned into that opportunity. Probably because we're entrepreneurial, right? Like it came natural to us, but that definitely sparked something inside of me. And again, I was already an entrepreneur by now. I'd already owned my first company. It was a recording studio. And, there was 2 reasons why we closed that down. One was, the truth. If I look back and say like, what really happened, I failed. Like I failed that business. I didn't know what I was doing. I was again, 18 or 19 years old when I created this company. I didn't know what being an entrepreneur was. All I knew was I was making money for the first time in my life. I grew up really poor and I'm like, oh, I'm rich. So I was spending money like I was rich, but I was poor and ended up getting myself into like tax debt and all these other things because I wasn't actually a business owner. I was just a guy making money and spending it irresponsibly. But the opportunity came when we were at Apple where one of my childhood friends called and said, hey, I'm marrying this Navy SEAL. I'm like, cool. Like, what's that mean? And she's like, oh, his name's Marcus Luttrell. Have you ever heard of him? And I was like, at this point, I did not. I had no clue who this guy was. And so I looked him up. He's a New York Times bestselling author of the book Lone Survivor. And fast forward just a couple years after I started working for them, they ended up making the movie Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg.
Hmm.
And she had basically reached out to say, hey, like they're about to make this movie of my husband and we need to like essentially monetize this. Like we need to monetize the opportunity. Can you help us? We need somebody to do a website and t-shirts. And I was the guy that she knew that was kind of creative. And I was also the person that was like, sure, I'll say yes to anything. I'll figure it out. Like I'll learn. I've never downloaded Photoshop, but I can download it tonight, you know? And I remember like thinking, because she asked me outright, like, do you want to come work for me? And I was like, no, like, I don't want another job. Like, if I'm going to do this, like, I'm going to kind of step out on my own and do my own business. And I remember sitting down with Luke, who was our store leader at Apple, our kind of senior manager at the time. And I just outright asked him, I was like, hey, like, there's this opportunity to go start my own thing. If I were to do it, do I have a job to come back to if it doesn't work out? And he was very supportive and said, I don't want you to ever live a life with regrets. You'll always have a place here. And so I felt like that gave me like a lot of confidence to like step out and just take that initial, upfront risk that a lot of people are afraid to do. And I was super fortunate that like I just grinded it out and here we are today.
I love that. I love that. Do you think, coming from your first initial business, and I love your humility in that, right? Like I was young, um, it failed for a variety of reasons, but oftentimes it's just like business excellence, right? And learning those kind of core principles. But was a little nerve-wracking for you, kind of like moving into this new environment, knowing that you'd come out of that. How did you approach it differently?
Oh, I still didn't have it all figured out, right? I mean, that's the reality. Luckily, bills were a little cheaper 15 years ago. Inflation wasn't where it is today. So it wasn't so hard to kind of navigate the expense piece, but it was still like, I felt like at the time I was putting a lot of responsibility at my girlfriend from way back then, right? Like she was having to like pick up a lot of slack and work extra for me to be able to kind of like do this and try this thing. And that relationship ended likely a lot, in fact, because there was just too much pressure on the relationship. Like I
Mm,
was dependent on her and I was so focused on the business that
mm.
it just didn't work out, right? It wasn't a healthy environment. And all of those experiences are like, some people might say, well, that's terrible. Like, do you really want that life? And it's like, no, it sucked, but it led me to where I'm at today. And I absolutely love my girlfriend that I'm with today. And, the life that we've created together and the business that I created. But dude, it was scary. Like the reality was like, I didn't know necessarily what I was getting myself into. I had like one client who wanted some t-shirts and a website. Like that's not enough to pay bills, right? So
Mhm.
basically from day one, it was like, okay, well, what is it going to take to actually grow this thing? And it was like, I think for me, it was like the Chamber of Commerce. It was like, okay, go meet with people at the local chamber and just meet people boots on the ground, which is a
Yeah.
lot of my start.
And I love that. That's very practical, right? Because oftentimes I get asked, like, how did you start and what do you do and how you go about it? And a lot of it is one, accidental apprenticeships, what people are around you that you go to that are a good voice in your life, right? And two, Jenny and I call people in which you're around expanders, right? They expand your realm of thinking of what's possible. And you want to emulate that, right? And a lot of these business owners that would come in, they were expanders to me, like a life and a trajectory of something that I wanted. You just didn't know where to start, right?
Yep.
And you can mitigate risk as much as you want, but it doesn't take away the risk completely. It's like cliff
100%.
jumping, right? It's probably a terrible analogy, and I was
Yeah,
an
but it's
idiot
true.
in my youth as well. But you check for rocks, you check areas, but nothing when you're on the edge of that cliff looking, 50 feet down, like you still have to jump. And
That's
it's
right.
scary and it's terrifying and all those sort of things. And then confidence built from that. But I remember when you left Apple and I was so curious. I was like, whoa, he did it, right? He left. And I remember specifically
Like we were escaping.
t-shirts, yeah, all this sort of stuff. I was like, Andrew, don't leave. Um, but I remember when you started all of this, when did Beefy come into this? And when did you feel like, because there's an element of opportunity, that opportunity cost of like, I see something, I need to latch onto it. And then it starts to mature into an entity. When did
Yeah.
when did you feel like Beefy was becoming a thing? And how did you even decide on the name Beefy?
Yeah, for sure. So the company started off Andrew Brockenbush Creative Consulting. Super original and super easy to remember. Um,
It's
and so
hilarious.
like that whole thing, like I think that was like where I started. It was like, okay, I'm a creative guy, I'm a consultant. My name's Andrew Brockenbush. Like, oh, it's a good company name, right? And then you start going to chamber meetings over and over and over again. And it's like, my name's Andrew Brockenbush with Andrew Brockenbush Creative Consulting. Like, dude, what? Is it even a business? And so honestly, it wasn't that long. It's probably like 6 months to a year after I left Apple that I was like, okay, I've went from one client to 10, 15 like consistent clients and, website retainers and graphic design jobs and things like that, where it was like, okay, calling this business by my own name just doesn't feel very credible, And so it was actually me and my buddy Adam, and I think there was a few other guys. We were all kind of hanging upstairs in my apartment complex. We were like, all right, we got to create a marketable name for this business because Andrew Brockenbush Creative Consulting is not it. And you know me, I'm a bigger guy. I'm a beefy guy. At the time, I was driving a really, really obnoxiously large, Chevy Silverado 2500. Just
you
massive
live in
beefy
Texas,
truck.
sir.
Live
You
in
live
Texas.
in Texas. All
It's
right,
allowed.
everything's
It's
bigger.
allowed. And so that was kind of like it was sort of as a joke. People were like, "What about beefy? Like beefy, like your truck, like you." And I'm like, "Okay, like that's fun." And then we kind of started punning around with it and joking about it. And we're like, all right, this is actually kind of funny. And the domain name's available. And if the domain name's available, it's a great company name, And so that was kind of the start. But really, there was two other things that really kind of like brought it home for me. One was that, again, a few years earlier, my dad had passed away. He was a rancher. He owned a cattle ranch. So Beefy like kind of paid like this like level of respect back to like who he was and what he did. And I thought that was really cool. And then there was this old Wendy's commercial. These three old ladies sitting at a table with the world's most pathetic hamburger in front of them. And they say the famous line, "Where's the beef?" Right? And for me, like that like really resonated because at the time, like I was a young agency owner. Look back 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of young entrepreneurs at this time. I mean, it was pretty new to be a young entrepreneur, especially at marketing agency. Like everyone I knew in the marketing space were like the guys that had been in the industry for a long time, traditional PR firms, things like that.
Yeah. And they had
so
weathered
like,
the storm that had come out of the financial crisis.
Yes.
Right. And so a lot of those businesses had weathered that storm, and starting a new business was kind of terrifying for a lot of people too.
Exactly. So like this was like really, really new. And I just remember being like, where's the beef? Like, where's the substance in marketing? And at this point, I felt like I was bringing something new and fresh that the marketing space hadn't seen. I was, coming from I'm born in 2000, or I wasn't born. I wish I was born in 2000. I was born in 1989 in the 80s, bro. It's like 2000. I was born in 2000. I graduated in 2008 from high school. And so like we came from the era of like MySpace, and like social media was like a big part of like our language and our culture. And so like I was really progressive in the agency world because like that was one of the first things we started doing was social media management. And I was like, oh, you know how to do social media? You know how to make a post on Facebook? And it's like, yeah, it's easy because we knew that language, right? And so that was kind of like where the Beefy name started. And now like it's funny because Beefy is such a fun name. It's become super personified, like to the point now when people see me at an event or a conference or even in my community, they're not like, "Hey, Andrew, how's it going?" They're like, "Beefy, what's up, Beefy?" And so we internally joke and we call our girls on our team are the Beefy Babes, and then the guys on the team are the Beefy Boys. And
Gosh, that's funny.
It's really taken on this like full personality, and it sparks a lot of conversations. Like anytime somebody hears our name Beefy, they're just like, "Beefy, like I like that. Like what's that mean?" And so it really does a good job of sparking interest in conversations, which is fun.
I love that. When did you feel when, things were starting, you're wearing a lot of hats, you're doing t-shirts, websites, you're a year in, you have 10, 15 clients. When did you feel like, oh, this thing is now starting to take shape, right?
Yeah. I think that as you start to realize that you can't do it all and you start dropping the ball and you start getting told that you suck, I mean, fairly, right? Like that's like when you start to have those like same like reflective thoughts from like whenever I first got to Apple and I felt like I had really pissed off the team. I was like, okay, like I don't want to be perceived as someone who says one thing but does another thing, right? Especially, you've got these core values that we have as companies and organizations, and sometimes like core values are more aspirations than they are lived values. And I feel like that's what like for me was the shift a little bit of like, okay, you're saying that this is the kind of person you're going to be. You're going to say that you execute and deliver. You're going to say that you exceed expectations. You're going to say that you give a shit. But are you actually showing up in that way? And
Mm.
I think that like pain, honestly, was really when I realized like this can't just be Andrew Brockenbush Creative Consulting or even just me as a sole proprietor in Beefy Marketing. Like, and I started hiring my first people. And I feel like when I hired my first people, like a person, that was like, oh, this is legit. Like I've got people working for me and I'm no
Mm.
longer responsible for just myself, but now I have people to be responsible for and take care of. And like that was both exciting and honestly terrifying because it's one thing to not have money to feed yourself and be willing to sacrifice and eat ramen
Right.
noodles, but it's hard to have that conversation with an employee.
100%. 100%. I think too, one of the things I think is unique out of our experience in our past, Apple's definitely been a core piece of mine and also other experiences in team dynamics. But it's one thing to start a business and wear multiple hats and recognize you need people in the door. It's another thing to A, hire the right people and be able to retain those people and form your own culture. You start to kind of you've probably heard that like storm, norm, perform
Yep.
kind of piece, right? And so as you're bringing people in the door, how did you approach the culture at that time? Did you feel like you were intentional about it, or did you just feel like the house is on fire, grab a bucket and go over there? Like, how did you approach that?
In the beginning, it was horrible. I did not trust and verify. I did not have expectations. I allowed toxic behavior to last for too long
Oh wow.
because
Yeah.
I didn't want to have uncomfortable conversations because I'm a pretty positive, non-confrontational kind of personality.
Sure.
And so I allowed behavior that didn't belong in a culture that I wanted to create to
Hmm.
exist for longer than I would have liked. And honestly, some of that growth some of that growth has even happened over the last few years of
Hmm.
me like investing in my own mentorship and leadership coaching and being like, oh, like you are still making some of the same mistakes that you made 10, 12 years ago
Right.
because you still don't want to be confrontational. And so I think that
Mm.
it wasn't extremely intentional in the beginning. It was very aspirational. It was like I came from a beautiful culture at Apple. I want that same feel good, fuzzy, we're all besties. Like I wanted that vibe. But I think in order to have that, you also still have to have like a level of trust and results and buy-in from your team beyond just we all feel good and we vibe. Because I
Mm.
don't I don't think that was ever a problem. I think we had a great fun culture of people that all like had a good time together. But if the results aren't there and if the way that they show up for you, like if your employees don't show up for you the way that you show up for them,
Yeah.
sure, they're never going to have the buy-in that you do as a CEO. Get it.
Sure.
But like they should still respect the culture that you're creating for them. And I feel like in the beginning I was not ultra, intentional because I just didn't know how to have those conversations. I didn't know how to be structured. And that just took time. Like I just had to weather that storm. I had to have some like painful conversations. I had to lose people that like were good friends as
Mm.
partners, as employees, because it was just like, okay, this is no longer serving to me or to the business or to them. And we're going to have to say goodbye to this relationship. And that sucks. Like that is a sucky feeling,
Mm.
but it's interesting. Like I love talking about like core values and culture because it is such an important part of the business to me. And it's something I like to coach other companies about. But as I talk about aspirational values, I think that we have got to constantly be looking at the culture that we're creating and the values
Mm.
that represent that culture and say, are the values on our website or on our brochure or on our, credo card, are these things that we are actually living daily?
Yeah.
And are we filtering decisions by way of that? And I feel like
Yeah.
that's where I was going wrong, right? Like I might have been carrying out those values, but I wasn't filtering decisions through it. So I was allowing clients to take advantage of our generosity
Mm.
and our time. I was allowing employees to do the same thing. Um,
Mm.
that creates a toxic culture pretty quick, right? It doesn't
Mm.
take much to like really have a culture shift in the opposite direction. And so that just takes time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Team dynamics are number one. There's thousands of books written on it, right? And I feel being in an environment where we're running on our own agency and things of that nature as well is a lot of it is number one. I have a hard enough time changing my own mind, right?
Yes.
Much less trying to change another person. But I do think that people intrinsically want to be a part of something bigger than themselves and they want to be we're tribal creatures, so we want to be a part of something. And I've been really really humbled by if you set the table and set the environment, people want to be a part of that, right? And they need it led and they need it modeled. But it is very much something to where instead of trying to change an environment, what are the things I can change in myself? What
Yes,
are the things that I
absolutely.
need to get real with? What are the areas that I need to mature as a leader, as a founder, as a team member, right? At the end of the day, like if you want to be a really, really great leader, you need to learn how to follow really, really well, right?
Yeah,
Like just being able to take directions and be able to obey the authority that is your boss or your manager or whatever that is, and build good rapport. And even you mentioned that of realizing, hey, I might have rubbed this culture the wrong way in the Apple store. I need to do some repair there. And there's some things I need to change about myself. And a big part of this is you have a vision for something and you want to pursue that. And you realize you can't do it on your own, all the hats, and then giving that responsibility and that trust away, but setting the tonality and being the North Star, right? The compass that's kind of
exactly.
moving. I always love that compass because sometimes people think it's like true north and it's like kind of wobbling a little bit,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? The imposter syndrome of like, oh my gosh, right? All of those pieces. Um, I think one of the things that you and I spoke about briefly was there is this, oh, I don't know. I'd say specifically for me, or even I'll talk to people, younger people that want to start a business, or maybe they work at a company and they want to step out within that company and they offer an idea. Is there's this piece that just because I started this, that the fear's all gone, right?
Yeah.
um, which is not the case, and it's constant risks. It's not one large risk that got us here. It's a lot of micro risks over time that you have to take, right? As the world is shifting, as things are evolving, all of that. And especially as marketers, professional marketers helping to guide other people through those environments, we have to be very, very intentional about our learning and our discovery and our own marketing internally, right? And so I think for you, when people come up to you and they talk through those things, how do you navigate that? Because I think there's this perception of like they did it, the fear's gone, and now you're good. I know that you're probably building things now and taking risks. I know you're writing a book, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you continue to navigate that? Does that fear ever really go away? Or
Yeah.
have you
No.
just gotten better at being able to manage that and push through?
Yeah. I think that the fear doesn't go away, right? Maybe the way you respond to fear changes. I think that is what changes, right? How we respond to the things that have once held us back. I just think that we have been there before. I always kind of say like this is not my first rodeo, which really plays well to my whole Beefy brand, right? But like it's not my first rodeo in the sense that like I know what it's like when business gets a little rough, and it's not a
Mm,
fun or pleasant feeling, but I've been here before. Like I know
mm,
what it's like. I love I love the art of visualization, right? Of saying, okay, what is the worst case scenario that could happen if this doesn't go the way I want it to go? What's the best case scenario, right?
mm.
Because once you visualize it and you think through that, then when you're actually faced with it, when it actually does happen, it doesn't feel like the first time you've ever experienced it, right? You're like, oh, I actually went through this scenario in my head and I know what to do about this. I'm not surprised. The movie, is it Sully, the Captain Sully, the guy that landed the plane in the Hudson River, right?
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
so this pilot, they asked him like, how did you guys do this so calmly? Because if you ever go watch the like listen to the recording on YouTube, he is like so chill, just like, yeah, we're good. We're landing this thing in the Hudson. And they interviewed him, asked him like, what made you so cool? And he said, because every morning for every shift that he'd ever had, he made his entire crew walk through scenarios of what would happen if there was an engine failure,
Oh, wow.
like any kind of like, think of any scenario, and he made them walk through it out loud as a visualization effort. So that day when all that went down, they'd already walked through it a million times. It did not
Wow.
feel new, so it wasn't scary. It wasn't a shock. It was like, oh yeah, we've done this before. We're gonna do this, 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 and this. And so I think that's how I feel about risk and fear now. Is that yeah, no, I'm still a little nervous. I'm still a little afraid. I just have also been here before, so I know what to expect,
Mm,
right? I know that it's not going to be that bad, right? It's uncomfortable, but it's not that bad. And I think a lot of that too comes from like outside counsel and getting
yeah,
yourself,
that's
I love
important.
the people you surround yourself with that have also weathered a storm
Sure.
have so much value to bring you, because it's like this might be my first time experiencing this kind of storm,
That's
but
right.
someone else out there has already been here, right?
I agree.
And
Yeah.
I think that has been a massive growth opportunity for me. So especially with new entrepreneurs who are like, but Andrew, I don't want to quit this job because I just feel like it's, it's like, hey, I get it. That first leap is the scariest one. After that, like you said, it's just compounding little micro things. It's not that big giant, like, this is crazy. Like leaving Apple, crazy.
Hmm.
Like doing it for 13 years, just felt like a part of the journey. Like no different than pissing some people off at Apple, no different than getting my black polo shirt. Like it was just another part of the journey.
100%. I love that. And I couldn't agree more, right? I think even doing this series, right, is a risk. It's something new and challenging ourselves. And I'm curious right now with Beefy or any even personal projects, is there anything you're working on now that you've had to push through that fear of like you feel that familiar feeling where you're like, should I do this? Okay, I'm going to do this. I've talked about it. I've journaled about it. I've written it down. I've whiteboarded. Like I've done all of the mitigation, right? What are you working on now that you're like, whew, you're having to like channel that?
Yeah, there's like a number of things, honestly, like not to bore the listeners, but there's been a lot in this last 2 years, right? Where I think I shared the story with you kind of offline that a little over a year ago, I actually hired someone to work for my company to basically go speak at events on
Mm,
behalf of my company, right? And I remember like, okay, this is going to be awesome. She's going to go speak at events, and then I'll kind of like be like the wingman, and I'll kind of queue up and be the one that like is the technical expert. And then I found out really quickly by talking to my leadership sales coaches, they were like, Andrew, like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're supposed to be the guy talking. Like, why did you hire someone to do this? They're like, you should fire her. And I was like, that sounds so mean. I don't want to fire her. And I remember like feeling like a lot of like internal like turmoil around like, I don't want to let this person go. I just promised them this opportunity. And so when I came home, I called her up and I just expressed what had happened. And she's like, Andrew, I wouldn't agree like less, like, or I wouldn't agree more. Like you should be the guy speaking. Like,
mm.
and so for the next few months, me and her got to work side by side. I would go to events with her. I would slowly start speaking. And fast forward, a couple years later, I've spoken on cruise ships at large conferences. I'll be speaking at South by Southwest in Austin this coming up week.
Oh, awesome.
Like so many cool opportunities. But that was that was one of the big ones that I think was really the catalyst to a lot of other decisions like that. I mean, some of the other things I'm working on, the book, like that's scary. Like
Mm.
I went into the process of writing the book thinking I was writing like a generic marketing book. Like I'm going to teach small businesses about SEO in this book. It's not that. It is a leadership business, masterclass on how to avoid the failures that I experienced. And it has been largely therapeutic. Like, and
Oh,
that part I wasn't expecting. Like I hired a book coach. I wanted to do it right. I wanted that accountability. And he's kind of forced me to tell stories that I might not have told in a generic marketing book
sure.
that have been like a little painful. Like, you have to revisit some of the
Mm.
darkest times of my life, both personally and in the business, like early days of
Sure.
the company that I'm like, man, I've not thought about that failure in a long time.
Yeah,
And
totally.
some of them you're like, I'm so glad I learned from that. And other ones you're like, why am I an idiot? Why am I still making those same mistakes,
Sure. Sure.
And so the book has been good. And then I think the one I'm working on right now, like right this second that I'm like super nervous about is I feel like this calling or passion to support other agency owners.
Mm.
These other marketing agencies that are trying to figure out how to scale, how to get it to the next level, how to grow it. And I've thought that I wanted to do this for a couple of years now, but I was just like, no, there's plenty of noise. There's a lot of people that are really great coaches that have hit the 8-figure mark in their agency. Like I'm not that guy. Maybe I don't belong in the same room as those people. But then really over the last 6 months, it just kept coming up over and over again, where it was like, okay, I think I have a responsibility to do this. Like I think that
Mm.
I'm doing a disservice to myself and to the people around me if I don't
Sure.
offer this. And so I did the first scary thing actually a couple weeks ago. I was in LA at an agency conference, and one of the guys that we were at dinner with runs a pretty large agency community. And I just looked over to him and I was like, hey, Graham, if the opportunity ever comes available for you to have any additional coaches in your community, I would love the opportunity because I'm feeling led to do this. And he
Mm.
like stopped and I could see his gears turning and he's like, let's have a call next week whenever we get back from LA. And
Oh,
I
wow.
just found out this week that I'll be getting a coaching role inside of their community. But that was scary.
Congratulations. Yeah,
Thanks, man. Like
100%.
I
100%.
don't, especially when you don't feel like you've hit the level of success that you expect from yourself, right? Or maybe that you feel that other people expect of you.
Sure.
And so I think that that's when you get that imposter syndrome seeping in, where you're like,
Hmm.
well, I haven't, done this milestone, this milestone, this milestone. So really, do I have anything to share? And it's like, but then when I'm with smaller agencies and I'm talking to them, I'm like, oh yeah, there's plenty I can, like, there's a lot of value I can share because I can see the
Yeah.
mistakes that they're
Yeah.
making or the mistakes I made 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you touched on something I think about often is I talk to people often about this. Even within our own business, there's this element of taking risks. Starting the business was risk one. There's a lot of other things within the business, or even personal things, right? Like you and I are both musicians, and songwriting is a big risk, right? You're
Yes.
putting your thoughts, feelings, emotions out there into the world. But there's this piece of sometimes people waiting for someone else to give them permission to do
Yep.
the thing, right? And I think there is a courage and a grit that is necessary over time to give yourself permission, right? Like for example, you were at that table and you were the one that you put that out into the world, right? You
Yes.
made a declaration to that person and said, "Hey, if an opportunity arises, I'd like to do that." Does that mean you're perfectly prepared and all of those things? No. It means that you gave yourself permission to take that risk. And then it's like we get what we want, and then it's like, oh shit. Right?
Oh, now
Like
what?
it's yeah, oh now what? It's like, oh my God, I took that risk
Can I
and
fulfill
now
on
they
this?
said yes. I got what I wanted, and now I'm freaking out, right? And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I tend to that has been my whole life. Like I'll jump in midair. I'm like, oh no, how can I make
Oh
Mr.
crap.
Less? Right? And so, but I do think there can be this I don't know, there's this element of like you have to have that personality style to be an entrepreneur or do any of those sort of things, or even some of the thoughts and feelings towards creatives, like they're messy and late and all that. Quite the contrary, like the people that I've noticed are doing really, really great things are pretty dang organized. They're good at learning from their past failures and learning from the failures of others and taking advice. Like there's a lack of ego, right? Of just saying, hey, I want to learn from you. I want to move forward. And so I think as we mature as leaders, you're never going to completely take away risk, right? If you're waiting around for someone to give you permission, like you really have to champion for yourself. And
Yes.
you really have to work through that fear. And even when sometimes the fear is worse when the yes is said, right? And
Yes.
being able to say, okay, yeah, get up on that stage and sing a song. You're like, oh no, right?
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's this area that I don't know for you is when you take that risk and you step into that area, um, what do you need to be successful, right? And mentorship has been a huge part to me, right? Like filtering my own subjective opinion through an objective counsel of people,
Yeah.
right? So I'd love to know, like, as you're doing a lot of different things, writing a book, running Beefy, looking at coaching and leadership and public speaking, how if someone is looking to start something, and there's different levels, different tiers, right? There's that first risk of starting a business to now you've been running the business 5 years, and there's other risks on top of that. But what are the kind of people, and how would you encourage people to find a counsel if they feel like they don't have anyone championing in their corner, or finding a community or things of that nature? How would you help them help themselves, really?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that one of the hardest parts about entrepreneurship and starting a business is the loneliness that no one warns you
Yeah.
about. Like
Yeah, it's
what
true.
is publicly visible on social media is this glamorous, outwardly awesome experience. And
Mm,
there is a lot of that. Like I won't argue that. But there's also a lot of loneliness, a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, a lot of frustrations with inside of your relationships
right.
because you are at the center of everything that your business is doing. So like this isn't
Mm,
to scare you off, but it's to be like real about this, right? And I think that I waited too long to hire coaches and mentors and get involved
wow.
in a community outside of myself because I thought that
Mm,
that was reserved for like the elite, right? And
that's
like
funny.
it's funny now I kind of use the analogy, which is a terrible analogy, but I kind of use the analogy like fit people don't need personal trainers. Fat people need personal trainers. Like, I'm the guy that needs a personal trainer. Like, I'm a little big right now. Like, I need help in that area. And I feel like a lot of times, like, we think that, oh, we won't hire a coach until we are successful.
Mm,
No. Sure, successful people also need coaches, but
mm,
you are worthy of a coach now. You are worthy of counsel and mentorship. I love the word I use a lot with the people that I work with. It's called borrowed confidence.
mm.
I love borrowed confidence of, like you said, you have to take your own risk. You have to put yourself out there. You have to one that kind
Sure.
of puts it into the universe. But sometimes you need to borrow some confidence from somebody else
No, I
that's
like
willing to
that.
say, like, Andrew, like, you're awesome. You're crushing it. And for the longest, like, I did not take that feedback well. Like, I was just like, not that I took it negatively. I was just like, okay, thanks. Like, I don't want you to tell me that I'm cool, I'm good at what
Yeah,
I do.
yeah,
Like, it just felt uncomfortable.
yeah. It's like,
Um,
don't jinx me, okay?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Now I feel like I try to filter it a little bit differently. I try to take that
Mm,
feedback as, like, positive confirmation of what I'm working on. Like, over the last few weeks, I've had a couple different people tell me, Andrew, I love your social media content. Like, we know that it's a lonely world posting on social media when no one is engaged, but they were like, your videos are really fun. Like, we love seeing your videos. And I was like, oh, like, that does mean a lot, because, like, sometimes it feels like a royal waste of my time to be making
mhm.
videos for Facebook. But then I meet people in the community or at chamber events or networking events where they're just like, dude, your videos are awesome. And I'm like, okay, at least I'm, like, top of mind for you. Like, that's a good thing, right?
Mm,
And so I think that, in terms of, like, where do you start? For me, I started with people that I already knew. Like, I had some, mentors from my church that I started with, that I didn't have money at all. So I just, like, I would have breakfast with this guy who I still have breakfast with to this day, by the way.
that's
The
awesome.
worship leader at our church was a guy named Joey, and I love this guy to death. And we'll do breakfast on Thursday morning still to this day, just because it's like he keeps me sharp and I keep him sharp, right? Like, it's a win-win. Like, we're very different age range, but it doesn't matter. Like, there's so much that we can both pour into each other.
Yeah,
Again, keep in mind that there are a lot of coaches out there that are not so expensive that you can't afford one right out of the gate. I think that you spend money and you invest in what is important to you. So for
yeah,
me, like, in early days of the business, I could have easily spent $1,000 a month and had a really good business coach, but I didn't know that I should focus on that. I thought I should
got
spend
it.
all that money on ads
Marketing
or
and yeah.
marketing
Hmm.
and the reality is I could have probably saved a lot of miles if I would have just worked with a coach first, because they would have told me
Yeah,
what stuff to do, what stuff not to do. And it wouldn't have been such a lonely journey, because for me,
there you
the
go.
first five or 6 years was just like, ruthlessly lonely. Like, where it was just like, no one gets it. I'm in this by myself.
Mm,
Um, Fast forward now, like, I'm in a part of a multitude of communities of both broad general entrepreneurship as well as, like, specifically in my industry, agencies, where at first I used to think, like, I was a bit threatened by that. Like,
mm,
we're all marketing agencies. I don't want to go to an agency mastermind. They're going to take my business, like, and now I'm
100%.
like, no, like, there is so many people in the world who want to see other people be successful. And
Oh
I
yeah.
love being in that space.
I love that. That's really good. I I love how you frame that in terms of find people around you, right? Even if you even have a dime or a cent. In my experience, like it's not hard to find people that will help you, but it's really hard sometimes to ask for help,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. That's great.
And Chris Rock, he made this statement about help, right? And he said that he would be trying to go to hit his next gig, and he had like a beater of a car, and it would break down. And he said what he observed is that if he was broken down and he was trying to wave people down to help him out, they would just like blow by him. He was like super frustrated. But the minute he started pushing the car and putting some effort, people would pull over without question and get behind him and ask how to help. And so there is this element of like, we have to take the first risk ourselves and
Yeah.
help ourselves, right? And people will come alongside to help support you as well, right? So I love that analogy. And I have a business coach as well. I have multiple attorneys. I have
Yes.
people and friends in which I trust, because oftentimes we are emotional creatures, and you hear all the time,
Absolutely.
it's not personal, it's business. Everything is personal,
It's all
man, right?
personal.
It's
Yes.
all personal, right? Even finances. Why are people so well? Because we trade our time, and our time is very valuable, right? And so
Yeah.
it's this piece of being able to work through those on your own and seek counsel objectively, because we can live in our own bubble, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that you're mentioning how important those communities are and how important those networks are. I'd say CEOs are pretty stubborn people, right? We want to do it on our own. And to your point, it's like, I don't want anyone taking my business. I want to do it on my own. I want to be the one that said I got to the top of Everest,
Exactly.
realizing that we probably need some Sherpas. We need to go
Yep.
with a group of people. We need ropes. We need security. We need oxygen. These things are helpful for us to succeed. And generally, we don't want to kind of die quietly off into the corner. We need people. I need encouragement. I need help and support. I'm a human being as well, right? And what I've observed is when I take risk and I'm healthy, it uplifts the team as a whole.
Yes.
People want to be a part of those things as well, right?
Yeah. I
And
mean, our
so,
team, our team has massively grown, like in terms of like our interpersonal relationships and just like the culture as a whole, because of me going and getting therapy. Not really therapy, but like leadership coaching, right? Feels like therapy. But
I
like
go to therapy, and that's probably helped as well, both
it's
business
probably
business therapy and personal
and personal
therapy.
therapy,
Okay, I'm an
exactly.
advocate.
But like 100%, like I remember actually recently we had a situation in the business where 3 or 4 years ago, I would have freaked out. I would have texted everybody on the team, like, what are we going to do? I'd
Oh,
have just
got it.
been a little
Yeah,
bit like
yeah,
frantic about it because I would have been like uncertain of what was going to be on the other side of that problem.
sure, sure,
And I feel like, again, because I work with an amazing leadership coach, I just don't take it like that anymore. Like now it's
sure.
just very much like, okay, if I freak out my team, it's all going to be bad. So I need to process this first.
I need to,
You know, I
yeah,
need to
yeah,
process
yeah,
this first.
yeah. Hot potato. Oh my God.
And
Yeah,
exactly.
100%,
And the
100%.
team has told me outright, they're just like, Andrew, like you are night and day a different leader than just a few years
Wow,
ago.
wow.
And that's a cool feeling
Yeah,
because you don't always necessarily see it in the week to week personally.
sure.
It's like losing weight, right? Like I don't always notice when I lose weight, but somebody randomly that's not seeing me in a few weeks is like, hey, I can't see your double chin anymore. You're like, oh, thanks,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
that's how like coaching feels a little bit. It's like I don't feel on a daily that I'm getting better, but my
sure,
team, who's
sure,
always been the recipient of, me
sure.
as a leader, they can
Yeah,
feel it, and that's good
yeah.
to know that it's actually making a positive impact.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things personally I feel, especially in the States, westernized culture, hustle culture, things of that nature, but you can't argue that there's been a lot of progress, right? I personally feel that we've over celebrated the self made man or woman,
Mm,
right? And we have forgotten the team of people that helped surround them to make that possible. And I've observed that in myself is like, I got to be the one responsible. I got to do this. I got to do that. And oftentimes I'm blocking the very growth I hope to have, right? Or I'm micromanaging the thing that I'm hoping to give away, or I'm standing in the doorway instead of like moving off to the side. And that's really hard when you've been operating in that soul space for so long. But what I've observed specifically, and I also want to frame this as this isn't just a founders and business owners discussion. There are a lot of incredible people that are doing things inside of organizations that
absolutely.
organization and business could really profit from and grow from. And so building that culture within yourself allows your team to be able to bring thoughts and ideas in a place of safety. They're going to help grow that. So this isn't just, not everyone is made to run a business, and that's okay. And frankly, if we just had a bunch of business owners, we wouldn't have teams of people to help cultivate and do that, right? I think we're the ones that jumped off the cliff and
Yeah,
tell everyone else
we're the
where not
crazy
to jump.
ones.
Exactly, right? But there are plenty of leadership and risk opportunities within existing businesses. If you frame that culture and you're able to get the business therapy and the personal therapy, it helps to unlock those things, to not feel as if it's all your responsibility. All the ideas have to come from you. All the risk has to be established. I'm now being challenged by my team to risk. Part of this series is that risk, to say, hey, listen, we want you to talk more about Red Door. We want you to be the established North Star and the voice of this agency and this growth. And so that element of me seeking help, I have observed that it's also helped my team elevate and grow and want more as well. So taking that risk isn't just to start that business. That risk could be you having the courage in a meeting to speak up and say, I think we should go left when maybe everyone else is saying to go right. Right. And so I think there's a lot of that courage element that is learning, teaching other people how to treat, treat you. Right.
Yeah.
But speaking up and advocating for yourself like is so, so, so important in that environment. Um, One of the things as we start to wrap up here a little bit is I want to ask you one question and then I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your book at the end because I think there's a lot of really helpful things. And a part of the impetus of this whole series is to help support people on the journey and have real conversations and dialogue, not just search something up on Google, but to hear from someone to say, hey, there are real challenges, there are real things, but here are people that have gone through it and to encourage you to say it is possible and you can do it. And here are tools and hacks and support that no one's going to show up and do it for you. You're going to have to go out and do it on your own. So I'd love to know for someone that's thinking of stepping out, starting something that could be within a company, that could be an entrepreneurial move. What advice do you have for them today? What is today? March 10th, as we're all recovering from Spring Forward Hour.
Yes, silly thing.
What would you say to them right now if someone is like, Andrew, I have an idea and I want to start. What do I do? What advice would you have for them?
I think you've got to rip the Band-Aid, right? I think that we are typically our biggest obstacle. Like our what ifs, the things that we question, the things that we say, but what if you can just let go of that and just move forward, you're going to realize that you are always allowing yourself to slow yourself down. So that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I think that you have to rip the Band-Aid and you have to just take the first micro action, whatever that thing is. Like for you in this podcast, it's booking your first guest. For me, doing agency coaching, it was saying, I want to coach in your community. Like my leadership coach this morning said, don't give someone else your nose. Don't let them basically a lot of times I want to project the thing that I think that they're going to say onto them. I think that this person's going to say no, so I'm just not going to ask.
Wow.
Don't do that.
Don't kneecap yourself.
You don't know what they're going to say until, right? And so I think that for me, so much has come from just taking one micro action in the direction in which I want to go. And naturally it's like, you're just chipping away a little at a time. And you're going to find that as you start to make those tiny chips that you're like, oh, look, it just opened a little bit more and a little bit more. And before you know it, there's this big wide open that you're like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. I'm so glad I did this. And so I think, and I tell this to, my girlfriend, Kara, when she's talking about taking risks, really, really quick, brief story, because I loved what you talked about with, how this doesn't apply just to business owners and entrepreneurs. It applies to anyone in any organization. Yeah. Kara was at a company recently that she was a senior director of social media. And she realized pretty quick in this company that the culture was just really toxic. And she knew, okay, this isn't going to be a long-term place for me, but I'm going to try to make the greatest impact I can have while I'm here. Oh, wow. And she realized that she was only going to be able to affect change in her kind of inter-team that she worked with, right?
Sure.
And it was actually something I'm really proud of her for, and just to see kind of what happened from it. But there was this girl that she worked with who was doing a completely different role, who they took a lot of advantage of. They didn't pay her what she was worth. Because she didn't have a degree, they wouldn't give her any senior title or senior responsibility because they were just like, well, you don't have a title. And the girl was fully capable of carrying the role that Kara was hired to do. And so the whole time Kara was there, she's like, I'm going to make it my life's mission at this job that by the time I leave here, that girl gets my job. I want
That's
her.
Really cool.
And she was able to accomplish that. When she left, she had an exit interview. And the thing she told him was, you guys are idiots, basically, for not giving this girl the job. She's fully capable. Y'all are allowing a title of a degree to affect whether or not you give her someone who's already doing this role on a daily basis on top of their other responsibilities.
Wow.
And so she got a call 2 weeks after she left that girl was offered the senior social media director role, got a really life-changing pay raise from where she was at to where she's at now.
Wow.
And it's that's a great example of the fact that by taking risk, by saying, you know what, maybe this isn't the place for me forever, but I can still make a change and I can make an impact in my kind of immediate circle.
Sure.
So I think that applies to any risk that we take. It's just taking that micro action.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. That's really good. I need to hear that personally for me too.
Yeah.
Right. Um, I would love to, as we kind of close a little bit, I'd love to know a little bit more about your book, how people can find it. Does it have a name? Yeah, tell me a little bit about it.
So funny, man. It started off as an idea to write a truly like just kind of a general marketing book. It was going to be called WTF is Marketing, because the reason I wanted that title is because some people come to me and they're like, "What do you market?" I'm like, "What? What do you mean? What do I market? Like, what kind of question is this?" And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to just dumb down technical marketing principles in a book. And it literally was going to be like chapter 1, SEO, chapter 2, paid advertising, chapter 3,
Right.
inbound marketing. Like, it was going to be very like a dummy's guide to like technical marketing, but broken down into a small business
Sure.
guide. And I hired this book coach and he told me that was a terrible idea and was like, we're gonna we're gonna weave stories of marketing into your actual story. And what the book is becoming is so much more like, as I'm reading it,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, it's speaking to me, which is really interesting. Like, I'm writing it and I'm like reading it back and being like,
Sure.
me
Sure.
and me and Kara went on a walk the other day. Every morning we go on about a 4 mile walk, trying to get my steps in, you know. And what I'll do is the Saturday, the Friday or the Saturday of a weekend, I'll write that week's chapter. And then Sunday or Monday morning on our walk, we will play, like we'll let like the audio text read
Oh yeah,
thing,
yeah,
like
yeah.
read it back to us. And so we'll listen to it like an audiobook while we're walking. And we were listening to chapter 4, I believe. And we got done and we were both looking at each other like, oh my gosh, like there is so much there that is like,
Hmm.
even 12, 13 years later in our business, that still applies to us today. Like, it's like we need to like take our own advice, just like,
Sure. Sure.
and it's because, you know, as entrepreneurs or even individuals, we're stubborn, right? Like, that's the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
And we think we think we have it all figured out, and we don't. Like, we're constantly
True.
learning. And I
It's
think
true.
that, the book doesn't have a title yet. I keep asking my co-writer slash book coach guy, I'm like, come on, can we come up with a title? I'm on podcast. I need to promote it. He's like, let's get about, 3/4 of the way through and see if the book tells us what the title's going to be. And I'm like, can you just tell me what the title's going to be? Like, that would be nice. But I feel like there's a lot of like practical lessons that I've learned from being an entrepreneur, from owning an agency. It's not an autobiography, so it's not going to be like you're going to read it and be like, oh, great, Andrew's life. Like, it's the lessons that I learned kind of like in the chronological order of my business. Everything from
Sure.
leaving Apple. I think opening story in chapter 1 is like my first word was money. And so I'm really kind of talking about like, which my first word was actually money, which is hilarious.
My
But
kid's first words with salsa, so we'll see what he does
is
with
it
that.
really? Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some salsa tonight, bro, because, Tex-Mex, baby.
There you
Um,
go.
but so my first word was money. And that chapter really does a great job of setting up the book for like what the book's going to be about, because I'm really kind of talking about this, like where I came from and like kind of my unhealthy relationship with money. Right.
Mm,
And,
mm,
and a lot of my decisions in business were because I'm constantly looking at the poor version of Andrew and
mm.
making decisions based on that, which is not necessarily healthy. Right. Because where
Sure.
I'm at today
Sure.
is not where I was at then.
Sure.
And so I'm talking about everything from leadership. I'm talking about in chapter 5 that I just finished, I'm talking all about culture. And I love that you shared the fact that like we have to examine ourselves first. Like, literally a snippet from the chapter is all about that. I'm like,
Oh
it's
wow.
so easy to like point at a process or an employee and say that they were
100%.
the reason why there was a problem.
100%. Yeah.
But your employees listen to like the actions that you're taking. If I'm setting the
That's
example
right.
that you don't have to follow up with people and that you aren't going to be like super proactive when you say you're going to be proactive, and the things that you put on your website as your values don't actually matter to you, because when's the last time that you actually followed through, like whatever the case may be, that's you as a leader having an area to improve. And so I think, I don't know where the next 4 chapters will go. I'm really excited to see, like I've got 4 more to go.
That's awesome.
And what I'll do for your listeners is I will put together one of the chapters as a free kind of giveaway. I'll
Oh,
send it
awesome.
to you and let
That's rad.
everyone download a free chapter, kind of get a feel for it. The goal is to have the book ready to be published like May. Fingers crossed. Like, I think we're on track right now to hit that. And I'm very excited. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, even if you're somebody like Kara who's working in a job where you're just like, how can I make a positive impact and positive change? I don't think this book is just speaking to the CEO. It's talking to anyone who can relate to living in isolation or feeling like they're in isolation, and
Sure.
just wanting to break out of that.
I love that. I love that. Well, I think people are going to be really stoked to get perspectives from you. So when you have that ready, please do share, and we'll
Yes.
share it with listeners as well. So, Andrew, thank you so much. I love your story. I know you personally. I think a big part of this is I get to have people on here that I have relationship with, and I want them to
Isn't
get
that
to know
fun?
you and fall in love with you just like, I am with you and who you
That's
are and
awesome,
your
man.
story. I know you and I have constantly called each other and encouraged each other. And
Oh
that's a
yeah.
big piece as well, right? If you can encourage someone else in a new role, in a new area, in an area of taking risks, do that and encourage yourself, right? And so, yeah,
I
this is
I
open door, man.
I love that, man. Because you asked me earlier what was like the one thing you could do to build community. Start a podcast. You don't think that you have access to people? You start a podcast. Guess what? Those doors start
Boom.
opening.
There you go. There you go. I'm just baby steps here, bud. I'm just
That's right.
little baby steps. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on Open Door. I think there's going to be a lot of value for people that are looking to take that risk, that next step, regardless of what role they're in or what they're trying to do. A lot of it is just hearing from other people. And I think that encourages us and it expands us. So, Andrew, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Awesome. All right. Well, join us next time for another Open Door series. Real conversations, real people. Thanks for coming in the door. If you guys love this, let us know in the comments and be on the lookout for a little bit of a snippet of Andrew's new book. Thank you, Andrew.